Good morning. Welcome to the Windsor Star News Cafe. I'm Don McArthur here with Dylan Kristy and Star opinion columnist Anne Jarvis. Welcome back.
Morning.
Okay. It was a big day. Anne's column ran in the paper. She endorsed a candidate for mayor, reservedly. Talk about that, Anne.
Well, yes, reservedly, a lot of buts. It was really tricky to negotiate, to tell you the truth, because I felt that he was the best candidate, but there were a lot of questions, I think. And on the one hand, I think he is likely to be the next mayor.
And I don't think we did Drew Dilkins.
Drew Dilkins,
to be clear, we're talking about Drew Dilkins, yeah.
Yeah. And I think he is likely to be the next mayor, and so he'll be starting his first term as mayor. You want to, the city should show its support, should rally around, but at the same time, I think that you can't forget that there are some real questions about him and his campaign. So it was very tricky to negotiate. I think that he clearly had the best campaign in what I would say overall was a relatively uninspiring campaign on all sides in terms of the mayor's race. Certainly the ward races I thought were much more interesting, but I think that he was very clear with what he wants to do. He spelled it out in his book, his fiscal, sort of responsible fiscal plan, what he wants to do in terms of economic development. And one of the big things I really liked about his campaign was whereas the other two main candidates, John Mills and Larry Horowitz, were saying, no big projects, no bells and whistles. Drew recognizes that amenities are really a major part of the city, and it's not just amenities. It's the fact that they attract investment. They make the place a nice place to live, a place where companies want to come, where their employees want to come. And so I think that's really crucial. And I don't think that the other two candidates really recognized that, and Drew did, and that was a significant difference. He's absolutely right. They are not bells and whistles. They are essential elements of a strong, vibrant community.
Oh, for sure, because you can bring jobs here, but it's the bells and whistles that kind of keep people here and help them actually enjoy the place where they live, right? I like bells and whistles.
Yeah,
yeah, youth especially need bells and whistles.
Yeah, I mean, no one says that I want to move somewhere because, God, they have great sewers there.
Yeah.
So it's important, and he recognizes that.
Actually, you were saying the one thing against Dilkins, though, is that he really failed during this campaign to kind of separate himself from the past council and specifically Eddie Francis.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's true. And, I think people were saying that throughout the campaign, and still he never managed to do that. I think he's correct when he says that the previous council achieved a lot under very trying circumstances and did it in a fiscally responsible way, and also managed to include some amenities. That's all very true. And Drew himself will say that it was, if he didn't follow through on those things, he would be criticized for that. And so I think he's right about that. But I also think that the fact that he was so rigid, I think people began to wonder, who are we actually electing, and does Drew have any ideas of his own? And I think a very telling comment was he was asked at the end, during a scrum at the end of his final news conference this week, did you see any interesting ideas in the ward races? And there are a lot of interesting candidates, very good candidates in the ward races, and some very good ideas. And he said that no, he really hadn't seen anything, nothing really jumped off the page. And, I was kind of astounded. And then what he went on to say was even more astounding. He said that, it's easy to dream when you are a candidate and you've never been on council before, you don't know how things work, you don't know what the challenges are. He said, I don't want to kill anybody's dreams, he said, but some of this stuff is almost impossible, he said. And then he said, but they're fun to read. It really did not bode well in terms of embracing the new talent that comes on council.
Well, there's been some great ideas out there, you're right, like Wi-Fi on city buses I love, but I think maybe my favorite idea of this whole campaign came from Sam Drakich in Ward 5, probably doesn't have a chance of winning, but he said late at night in the Drouillard Road area, transit in Windsor should let women off at their homes instead of a bus stop in the middle of the street. And to me, that's such a simple thing, and I really like that idea. But yeah, there's lots of good ideas out there. You got to look.
Yeah. And of course, he never. Another big question, I think, is he never admitted that the current council had any missteps whatsoever. And clearly they did. Every council does. And the Auditor General was a big one. And there are a lot of questions about Premier Aviation, of course. And so I think that really that inflexibility was troubling.
Oh, for sure. Now, for the other candidates, you were saying that Milson, he never really presented real ideas. And with Horowitz, he presented so many ideas that it almost seemed like it would be impossible to actually achieve all of them. Mm-hmm. So is it kind of just that Dilkins, he's kind of the best of the bunch, that he just kind of had the most substance?
I think so.
Yeah.
I kind of hate to put it that way, but I think so.
Ringing endorsement, best of the bunch. Well, yeah, and okay, so, sorry, on that, or is that?
Well, yeah, I think, the job of the challenger has a fundamental job, and there's two aspects to it. You point out what's wrong, and then you present your plan to fix it. Well, John Milson did point out what was wrong, and he made a lot of legitimate points, but he never followed up with what I felt was a comprehensible and viable plan. And let's face it too, he did praise the previous council, or the current council's record, quite effusively in an email to the mayor. I think he was angling for an endorsement at that point and didn't get it, and then, of course, turned on the attack and said very early on that originally that I'm not going to to criticize the current council's record because they have a good record. Well, then you kind of just cut yourself off at the knees right there. And he never really presented a viable plan, other than, of course, the Auditor General and a promise to have a different style, a much more collaborative style. And Larry, I really give Larry a lot of credit. He really put a lot of effort into his campaign. He came out very early. He's gone door to door. He was in my house twice. And he had signs all over, he had announcements, he had a platform, and he had some good planks in his platform. I mean, he also called for an Auditor General. He called for more focus on small business as opposed to, the big companies we keep trying to land, because small business makes up the majority of the economy. But again, it was hard to take him seriously because you would ask him how is he going to do this? How is he going to pay for everything? And he was, well, I'm a businessman. And that was his refrain throughout the campaign. And he was, my patience started to wear thin the day he had the announcement about the 5-year capital budget, claiming it was a $103 million debt. And I mean, I think he knew better. I think it was a stunt. And that kind of was disingenuous. And then, of course, came out that he had been suggesting that his children had to leave Windsor to get jobs. And then he finally admitted that was not why they'd left the city. So, he was a little disingenuous too, and that kind of took the excitement out of his campaign for me.
Now, being a columnist is a great job, you know what I mean? And you have a lot of power with the pen there. But, I mean, the flip side of it is, you have to come in here today and look at John Milson. You got to go look at Larry Horowitz. And maybe those guys, it's not so tough. But with the ward candidates, it must be tough when you have to pick one over the other. Everyone is, like, phoning you, trying for that endorsement. So is that difficult, sort of putting yourself out there, taking a stand? Is there a little guilt sometimes or uncertainty?
Well, I've always found I have kind of a love-hate relationship with this job. It's a fantastic job. I love this job, but it is stressful. Any issue, election or other, to put yourself out there all the time, especially on controversial issues. And when it comes to an election, too, having to endorse, the next mayor of the city, the next council of the city. It's very stressful. It's because a lot of people read it, and a lot of people look to the paper, to our stories, to our columns, our editorials, to Trail Talk, to help them make a decision. So, a lot of people do come to you. This week, a lot of calls, a lot of emails, especially people wanting you to pitch their idea, to pitch them, to do a column on them, to endorse them. And in a lot of wards, there was more than one good candidate, and you can only pick one. So it is a bit stressful. Okay. And it is hard to the people you don't fix, endorse. You come in and you see them, and Yeah, I didn't
I mean,
endorse
Milson's here
you.
right now, right? Like in the
Yes.
background, talking with reporter Carolyn Thompson. So
He is.
it's a small town, Windsor.
It is, and well, I try and I honestly try and pick the person that I feel is best for the job, and I really try to do my homework. I've read up on all of them. I've been to many of the announcements, the debates, interviewed them, watched Trail Talk, talked to colleagues about them. I try and put the work into it, and I try and make the best decision, based on many factors. That's all you can do, right?
No, absolutely.
Okay. Well, Anne, thanks very much for joining us. We really appreciate your input. We'll talk to you hopefully on Monday night. But until then, make sure you check out our column, Drew Dilkins, with a bunch of caveats.